What if the greatest guardian of truth is a demon from hell? While angels sang in the heavenly halls, a voice whispered from the shadows, not to deceive, but to reveal. Among all the demons named in forbidden grimoires, one bears a disturbing title, Orobas, the one who never lies. In a world where deception fuels the underworld, where pacts are sealed with poisoned promises and illusions wear crowns, Orobas stands out as a silent judge. According to ancient Gratia texts, he appears riding a mighty horse surrounded by blue flames and offers answers that are pure. No lies, no vice, no distortion. But why would a demon choose truth? In the infernal hierarchy ruled by Lucifer, lies aren't just common, they are essential. So why would someone like Orobas be kept so close, almost like a trusted oracle? Could truth be more dangerous than any lie ever told? In demonological tradition, Orobas is a prince. His power doesn't come from force or destruction. It comes from what he knows. He reads the future like it's the past. He reveals the present with unsettling clarity. He exposes betrayal, deceit, and conspiracy. That's why those who know him fear him, and those who summon him kneel. In forgotten medieval manuscripts hidden in ruined monasteries, there are accounts of inquisitors who banned his name, not out of fear of possession, but because he spoke truths about heaven itself. Why silence a demon? Who exposes the lies of the church? Orobas doesn't ask for blood. He doesn't demand pacts in exchange for lust, power, or destruction. He offers guidance. But his advice always comes with a price, facing what you don't want to hear. Lucifer, the fallen light-bearer, sees Orobas as a rare weapon. In spiritual wars where deception is strategy, truth becomes the sharpest blade. Ancient exorcists called him the mirror that bleeds, because those who summon him in search of answers are often cut by the truth they've spent a lifetime avoiding. What if the greatest protection from evil is knowing who we really are? There are records of kings, popes, and leaders who secretly consulted Orobas through mediums, rituals, and hidden invocations. He didn't just respond, he warned them of betrayal, political collapse, assassination plots. But there's something even darker. Some secret sects claimed Orobas wasn't a demon at all, but an angel who chose to stay in hell, that he didn't fall out of rebellion, but remained below to guard truths heaven couldn't bear to hold. What if the truth is so dangerous? Even God didn't want to carry it. But before anything else, ask yourself, if even demons know the truth, why do we keep choosing to live in lies? Orobas wasn't the only one to carry truth in the shadows. There's a lost gospel that links his name to the very creation of hell and to Lucifer's silence before God. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments. What if hell wasn't created to punish, but to hide truths heaven couldn't bear? The flame in Orobas's eyes doesn't burn, it illuminates. And what he reveals, no one dares speak aloud. His whispers, once transcribed by exiled monks, gave rise to what would be known as the Gospel of Silence, a lost text, condemned before it was ever translated. This gospel was never accepted among the canon. It spoke of an angelic being who valued truth over obedience, who refused the role of blind servant, who once said, "To lie is to serve the throne with closed eyes. To speak the truth is to face the Creator." And in this gospel, attributed to an apocryphal disciple of Enoch, Orobas appears as a witness to the first fall, not just Lucifer's, but a second forgotten fall, the fall of truth itself. Who truly fell? Lucifer, or the truth he carried? The text describes a celestial trial. Heavenly voices debated the creation of free will. Lucifer warned that mankind would become slaves to guilt. Michael, defender of blind obedience, accused him of heresy. But it was Orobas who stood, not to judge, but to record. According to this forbidden gospel, he chose no side. He chose to remember. He carried in silence the version no one wanted. Not heaven, not hell. What if the angels who record are more dangerous than those who fight? Occult tradition holds that Orobas is summoned by kings and traitors, seers and inquisitors, by those who seek to see the future, and those haunted by the past. In all cases, he doesn't distort, he reveals. But such clarity comes at a cost. History tells of punishments. One manuscript hidden deep within the Vatican Library describes the execution of a cardinal in 1324 who tried to translate part of the Gospel of Silence. Days later, he publicly confessed that the church had hidden angels who knew too much. Why silence those who simply repeat what they've seen? In inner circles of esoteric orders, there is a symbol that represents Orobas, a broken mirror wrapped in a serpent. It's not a symbol of evil, but of clarity. The mirror is the truth no one can bear. The serpent, the price of seeing it. According to forbidden Gnostic traditions, Lucifer trusted few, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. And Orobas was among the few who never betrayed him, because he never promised to please. What if the greatest act of loyalty is saying what no one wants to hear? The bond between Lucifer and Orobas is not one of command, but of trust. While other demons lie to seduce souls, Orobas protects those who listen to him with honesty. They say that those who accept his truth are never betrayed, because they already know who will. But there's something even more disturbing. The angels themselves avoid Orobas, because he knows their fears, because he holds heaven's secrets, truths so dangerous that, if spoken, they could unravel centuries of theology. What would happen if Orobas told the truth about the archangels themselves? Before he was feared by exorcists, Orobas was heard by monks. But something changed in the 4th century. Something that led to his name being erased from Christian history. If this message resonates with you, like this video and help spread the word. What if the earliest Christian monks summoned a demon to find out if they were being deceived by their own bishops? 4th century, Christianity, now institutionalized under the Roman Empire, left behind persecution and embraced power. Councils were formed, doctrines enforced, but in the shadows of remote monasteries. Far from the luxury of rising cathedrals, one name still echoed in secret chants, Orobas. Forgotten records found in Nag Hammadi mention a group of desert monks, known as the Silent Ones, who believed truth could not be taught, only received directly. And according to those texts, they turned to a being who never lied, a just spirit, a neutral observer. That spirit was described as a flaming knight, who spoke through dreams and visions. Only later would inquisitors identify this very figure as Orobas. Why would devout monks turn to a demon? In search of divine guidance? To them, Orobas wasn't worshipped, he was feared and respected. His purpose was simple: to confirm whether their leaders spoke with honesty, whether the newly established dogmas were just. And more than once, his answer was no. These monks began to reject the changes brought by the councils, the doctrine of the Trinity, the selection of specific texts as canon, the rejection of Gospels like Thomas, Mary Magdalene, and the Book of Enoch. And all because one entity told them truth was traded. How many doctrines would be different if the truth hadn't been buried in the name of unity? It was during this period that the monks began to vanish. Not in wars, but through accusations of heresy. Official records labeled them as extremist Gnostics. But in private letters exchanged between bishops and emperors, a single phrase kept appearing: silence the voices from the mirror. That was the code. They were referring to those who listened to Orobas. According to secret traditions preserved by esoteric orders, Lucifer gave one command regarding Orobas: he must not be destroyed, nor silenced, but hidden, so that only those who truly sought truth could ever find him. What if the most dangerous truths can only be heard by those willing to lose everything? Orobas continued to be consulted in the hidden chambers of power. Some believe Nostradamus invoked him during his visions, that the Cumaean Sibyl heard his voice echoing through the caves, that even modern prophets, hidden behind contemporary altars, still hear him whisper. Because what Orobas offers is not fame, not miracles, but clarity. And clarity can destroy entire kingdoms. Who could endure seeing the world through the eyes of absolute truth? Some of history's most powerful leaders were never betrayed, because they summoned Orobas first, and they left behind secret records that could change everything we know about political alliances. Subscribe! What comes next is even darker. What if some empires only survived Because a demon warned them of betrayal in advance. Governments collapse from within. Betrayals don't begin with swords, they begin with whispers. And there is one entity who always knew where those whispers came from: Orobas. In hidden records from Babylonian courts, the Assyrian Empire, ancient Egypt, and even Roman councils, there are disturbing traces of leaders, priests, and generals consulting an unusual oracle. Not a god, but something beneath the heavens, yet above falsehood. That oracle was Orobas, the spirit who revealed, without distortion, who would betray next. What if the world's longest-lasting political pacts were protected by a demon who could see the future? According to the Codex Hermeticum Abscissus, an occult manuscript rediscovered in the 19th century, Orobas was known among spiritual elites as the keeper of oaths. When two sides sealed a pact, he was called to witness it because he already knew whether the promise would be broken before it was even spoken. During Constantine's reign, hidden records suggest that Roman and Christian leaders performed private rituals before major decisions. One name keeps appearing in those reports: Orobas, the just seer, not as a demon in the traditional sense, but as a neutral force, unsettling, precise. What's more dangerous, being betrayed or knowing in advance who will do it? There is a lost passage in the Key of Solomon that describes a direct ritual of invocation to Orobas. The ceremony, silent and bloodless, required only a black candle, a covered mirror, and a handwritten name, the name of the person suspected of conspiracy. At the ritual's end, the name would either vanish or burn. The answer was unmistakable. They say Orobas never appears in physical form, but as a presence, an absence of doubt. When he manifests, the truth arrives with him, and with it, the burden of knowing. How many betrayals could be avoided if we knew who was watching us from behind? Templar accounts suggest that during certain covert campaigns, spiritual advisors would invoke Orobas to confirm the loyalty of their commanders. One such account, hidden within the Vatican secret archives, reads, "Better to consult the serpent's mirror before battle than to carry your brother's corpse on your back." Lucifer, in this infernal game of power, uses Orobas as his eyes amid deception. He doesn't demand loyalty, he demands transparency. And that's why, even among demons, Orobas is feared, because no one deceives the one who already knows. What if true spiritual protection isn't a prayer, but a revelation that prepares you for the betrayal? A president, a pope, a general, three men who never met, but were saved by the same entity. The records were buried, but they still exist. Share this with someone who needs to see what was hidden. What if the same demon saved a pope, a general, and a president, without any of them knowing the others even existed? Vatican City, 1181. Pope John Paul II survives an assassination attempt in the middle of St. Peter's Square. The world witnesses a miracle. But what the headlines didn't reveal is this: days earlier, a spiritual advisor handed him a cryptic message. Someone close to you will betray you, and he's already under watch. The source of that revelation? An occult medium from Eastern Europe, who claimed to receive answers from a being that never lied, Orobas. At the same time, in classified CIA records, documents from 1974 detail a strange incident. A high-ranking general abruptly withdrew from a major field operation, claiming an outside advisor warned him about a traitor within the base. Days later, an ambush wiped out the entire team. The advisor's identity was never officially disclosed, but within intelligence circles, he was referred to as Orbus, a Latinized variation of Orobas. How could the same entity protect religious, military, and political leaders with no ideology in common? The third case appears in the confidential archives of an international financial consortium. A Latin American president in the late 2000s made a bold move. He fired his entire security cabinet. When asked why, he simply replied, "I'd rather trust the truth of a stranger than the lies of those who smile to my face." Years later, leaked audio revealed compromising conversations between his former ministers, exactly the ones he had dismissed. He never revealed his source, but those close to him said that After meeting with a European occultist, he began consulting a presence that answered even before the questions were asked. Coincidence, or a silent network fed by an invisible spirit that whispers only to those brave enough to listen? Despite the demonic stigma, Orobas was never linked to soul corruption. He doesn't bargain, he doesn't seduce, he warns. In long-forgotten Bavarian grimoires, medieval kings referred to him as a neutral entity of hell, a paradoxical ally who didn't protect with strength, but with foresight. What if true power lies not in those who rule, but in those who know what's coming? Lucifer, according to certain hidden traditions, gave Orobas a mission unlike any other demons, not to deceive, but to expose deceivers. That's why he was never exorcised from the memory of certain occultists, because some didn't see him as a threat, but as the final warning before the fall. In the hidden corridors of power, there are symbols, drawn by hand, tucked behind paintings, carved discreetly into desks and books. A mirror, a serpent, and an eye crossed by a single line. This is the seal of Orobas, and it's in places you'd never expect. Who would you be if you knew the truth before it destroyed you? Orobas wasn't created to serve, but to remember. And the truth he keeps about Lucifer is one no angel dares to speak. Have you ever thought about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. What if hell had prophets too? And the most honest one stood by Lucifer from the very beginning. Christian tradition paints Lucifer as the rebel, the proud one, the betrayer of light. But in the forgotten layers of demonology, especially in apocryphal versions of the Book of the Watchers, a detail emerges that official theology prefers to ignore. Lucifer didn't just fall, he formed a council of entities who would not serve the throne, but would not devour the world either. Among them was one unlike the rest, a spirit who didn't seek glory or chaos, but memory. His name was Orobas, and the pact between them was sealed with words found in no modern grimoires. If I am to be the prince of lies, then let one among us guard the truth they'll try to erase. Why would the Lightbringer keep by his side someone who only speaks the truth? The answer is simple and devastating. Lucifer knew that every lie eventually expires. That power built on manipulation crumbles with time. So he made an eternal pact with Orobas. You will deceive no one. You will speak last, when all others have lied. This role isn't symbolic, it's strategic. In summoning rituals older than Solomon, there are fragments suggesting that when a demon breaks a pact, it is Orobas who judges. And his judgment is simple. He reveals, he exposes, he makes truth public. What if in hell, punishment isn't fire, but exposure? Multiple hermetic texts, preserved by discreet orders like the Rosicrucians and the Bavarian Illuminati, claim that Orobas was present during Lucifer's pacts with other entities of wisdom, Astaroth, Paimon Buer, but he was the only one who refused power. He said, "I'd rather be heard late than followed too soon." That rejection of authority made him the most dangerous of all, because he has nothing to gain from deception. And that's why, even among demons, no one dares to conspire against Orobas. What lives inside someone? That even liars fear him? In a redacted passage from the Grimorium Verum, there's a chilling analogy. Orobas is called the hidden heart of hell, not because he loves, but because he can sense when something is about to die. Even alliances. Lucifer, in granting freedom to his infernal generals, gave Orobas only one command. Speak when no one else has the courage. Judge when the lie becomes the new heaven. And what if true judgment doesn't come with trumpets, but with truths no one wants to hear? The oral tradition of the ancient masters of Goetia claims that every summoner, no matter what they're after, will one day encounter Orobas, because those who lie for power will eventually beg for a truth that might save them from ruin. Kings have lost everything, popes have fallen, and leaders have been assassinated, all for ignoring Orobas's final warning. Like this, if any part of it made you uncomfortable. What if the greatest disasters in history weren't unpredictable, just unheard? Every tragedy begins with a warning that was ignored. And few warn like Orobas across forgotten grimoires, especially in the inner seals of the Order of the Silver Serpent. There's a warning repeated through the centuries. Orobas doesn't scream, he whispers. And when silence answers, it's already too late. These records show a clear pattern, and the pattern is always the same. A warning, a refusal, a fall. What makes someone ignore the only entity that never lies? 1307, the fall of the Knights Templar. Just before the mass arrests, an inner circle known as the Listeners warned Jacques de Molay of betrayals within the order. The source? An esoteric ritual performed in the caves of southern France. The name invoked that night, Orobas. De Molay dismissed it. The order collapsed, and he was burned alive. Could silence be the punishment for those who choose illusion over truth? 17th century, Prague. An alchemist known as Magnus Verde crafted elixirs and read symbols for nobles. Once he refused to help a duke who wanted to poison his own brothers. In his journal, recovered years later, one phrase stands out. Orobas showed me their faces, and if he's right, and he always is, none of them will grow old. They all died under mysterious circumstances before turning 30. What if those who ignore Orobas aren't cursed but simply facing consequences? Even in the 20th century, his name resurfaces. In 1939, an Austrian occultist exiled in Paris wrote to a colleague, "The truth came too soon. He will fall because he thinks he's guided by light." The recipient, a German esotericist connected to Nazi elites. The he in question, Adolf Hitler. The occultist vanished shortly after, but his manuscript contained seals linked to Orobas. How many tragedies could have been avoided if someone had just listened to the one who never lies? In apocryphal texts from hidden Jewish traditions, there's mention of an angel whom God kept away from humanity, not out of cruelty, but because of his unbearable clarity. A being who couldn't stay silent when even the divine was wrong. The rabbis called him Orvazel. The name faded, but the symbol remained. The mirror, the serpent, the pierced eye. What if Orobas is older than hell itself? Orobas is the final chance. He doesn't offer miracles. He doesn't offer salvation. He only reveals what's coming and what's already unfolding in the shadows. But those who ignore him choose to bleed with their eyes wide open. While the world spins on public lies, those in power listen to one voice in secret, and that voice belongs to him. Subscribe. The truth doesn't end here. What if public speeches are rehearsed lies, but real decisions are guided by a silent demon? In top-level meetings, command rooms, and offices behind soundproof walls, there are secrets that never leak. But one name is still whispered among those who make decisions. On a global scale, Orobas, not as legend, not as folklore, but as an invisible advisor. Why would people with access to the best data and satellites still turn to an infernal spirit for guidance? The answer lies in what Orobas offers, truths that can't be bought. Data can be manipulated, statistics forged, but according to testimonies from former occultists embedded in elite circles, Orobas is summoned before billion-dollar mergers, high-stakes elections, and decisions that determine war or peace. In a leaked 2009 recording, never officially released but mentioned by a former European intelligence agent, a global pharma executive says, "We'll make the decision tomorrow, but only after the ritual. I want judgment from the one who never fails." The ritual's name? The Light of the Shadow. The entity summoned, Orobas. Why trust artificial intelligence when a demon always gets it right? Orobas is used like a spiritual algorithm, an ancient oracle. They say he answers clearly, directly, with no metaphors. His precision has become so reliable that CEOs and politicians quietly use his insights as part of unofficial risk audits. What sounds like superstition has become a refined method. Modern occult consulting firms offer symbolic advisory services using astrology, numerology, and cloaked rituals. But the most exclusive clients ask for something specific. I want the entity that never lies. I want the mirrored judgment. That's the corporate code name for Orobas. What does it say about our era, when the truth is only sought in the shadows? A former priest who left traditional faith and now serves as a spiritual consultant to politicians. revealed anonymously. Most of the people who come to me want a comforting lie. The ones who ask for orobas. They want to know who will betray them before the knife strikes. And that's exactly what he delivers. Behind closed doors, there are world leaders, court judges, even famous artists who meet with mediums and spiritual guides trained in controlled invocation, all seeking one thing, to know who is about to destroy their empire. What if the true cost of power and fame is living with truths you can never reveal? While priests speak for God at the altar, there are silent monks beneath the surface, listening to orobas in the underground. Tag someone who dare to watch this until the end. What if even God refused to hear certain truths, but a demon listened without judgment? There is a place where saints don't enter, where cathedral light cannot reach, where truth isn't a virtue, but a burden. In those dark, silent corridors, hidden beneath ancient monasteries and secret religious orders, there are rooms with no names. Inside, monks dressed in black kneel before mirrors covered in veils and whisper. Not prayers, confessions. Why would men of faith confess their sins to a demon? These monks belong to a brotherhood never officially recognized, known only as Ordo Speculum, the Order of the Mirror. They don't preach. They don't absolve. They don't lie. They listen. And when they seek answers, they don't call upon God. They summon orobas. These men understand there are sins doctrine cannot forgive, wounds no cross can heal, and questions heaven refuses to answer. That's where the last confessor comes in. According to manuscripts preserved in the codices of the Abbey of Monte Cassino, there are records of monks who lived in isolation for decades, not because of a vow of silence, but because they heard too much. All of them reported the same presence, a voiceless judgment, a faceless truth. What if orobas is the mirror even the saints fear to face? Lucifer never commanded that Orobas be worshipped, only that he be heard, because there are revelations too heavy for even heaven to carry. The oral tradition of the order claims that before death, chosen monks undergo one final ritual. There their deepest questions are presented to the mirror, and the answer, from behind the black veil, never fails. There is no vision, no voice, only a silent certainty that changes everything. Why do those who serve the faith the most fear the truth Orobas holds? In a letter hidden in the diary of a Renaissance cardinal, or there's one haunting confession. I prayed for 40 years. I fasted, I preached, but I only understood who I truly was when I saw my reflection burn before the seal of Orobas. And stories like this are more common than you think. Inside the Vatican, rumors say that 3 popes knew of the Order of the Mirror. 2 stayed silent. 1 tried to destroy it. None succeeded. What if the greatest test of faith is facing the truth that breaks you from within? These monks don't seek salvation. They seek precision. They know nothing can be hidden from Orobas. And that's why they fear him, the way fire is feared for both purifying and consuming. Orobas isn't the end of lies. He is the beginning of the collapse of illusion, and his final return has already been foretold. If this disturbed you, that was the point. Leave a comment. What if in the end, there's no religion, no ideology, only the raw, unbearable truth no one wanted to face? Throughout human history, there have been prophets who were wrong, scriptures that lied, and religions that manipulated. But among all the hidden, feared, or erased names, one has never contradicted itself. Orobas, the spirit who never sought worship, only to be heard. The demon who didn't offer power, but clarity. And what if the real hell is living an entire life without ever facing the truth? In the secret texts of the prophecy of Sitrael, as a lost codex attributed to a renegade, 10th century rabbi, there's a forgotten passage. When words lose their meaning, when the false are exalted, when the world drowns in versions, the last voice will be the burning mirror. Modern demonologists believe that voice is Orobas, not as a destroyer, but as a catalyst. The end won't come through war or famine. It will come through the exposure of what no one wanted to accept. What if the apocalypse isn't punishment, but total revelation? Within Goethe's inner circles, there's a ritual never made public. The final audience. In it, the summoner asks for nothing. They simply ask, Who am I really? And Orobas answers, no metaphors, no mercy, no delay. And most lose their minds, not because he shows the future, but because he reveals the present with no filter. And that's the pain no one can bear, because the greatest deception isn't out there, it's inside us. Why do we spend our lives running from who we are and call that spirituality? Lucifer chose Orobas not out of loyalty, but out of necessity. Even rebellion needs truth, or it becomes tyranny. And that's why, according to the apocryphal Gospels of Azazel, when everything is revealed, Orobas will appear at the center of a burning mirror before angels, demons, and men, and say, I didn't come to judge, I came to remind. And if all of this is real, why are we still keeping our eyes shut? This is the end. But the end isn't silence, it's revelation. Orobas is still among us, not in nightmares, but in choices. In mirrors, in instincts, in the truths we ignore out of fear. He doesn't scream, he waits. Because truth always waits to be heard. He never disappeared. He just speaks only to those brave enough to listen. And now that you've made it this far, the question isn't if he exists. It's, could you handle what he has to say about you? And if it's all real, leave your truth below.